Bum, ba-na-na. Welcome back to another edition of The Blue Review, a very special edition as we are joined yet again by our good friend Doug McCain. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause. I wish I had a soundboard on me. I think we need to upgrade this
Hey,
this
man. Happy
studio
to be
here.
here. Happy
Definitely a
to talk
soundboard.
ball with you guys, man.
Yeah, how's it been since we've last seen you? I mean, the Dodgers have been playing hot since the All-Star break, but so have the rest of the NL West. So things have been fun in the baseball world. Just what are your thoughts kind of on what you've seen so far, just from this Dodger squad?
I think the big thoughts is we're finally seeing the A lineup. We're finally seeing this team as close to full strength as we've seen them all season. Talking about it with Marcus a little before the show, Max Muncy is a massive glue guy and is a huge difference maker. And I thought that it was going to take at least a couple of games, maybe a week, to get that timing back, to get that power back. We've already seen him hit a couple of home runs. Last night hits a couple of doubles. That bases clearing 3-run double really blew the game wide open. And he's just a huge difference maker. I mean, this team without Max Muncy averaging under 5 runs per game, with Max Muncy averaging over 5 runs per game. And not only that, we're talking about a guy batting in the 7th spot. Max Muncy, a caliber of hitter, it's usually batting 4th, 5th, sometimes 2nd throughout the majority of his career, is batting 7th for the Dodgers. So I think there's that combined with the fact that they faced a starting pitching unit from the Mariners that had postseason caliber type of pitching with Wu, with Gilbert, and they still were able to either get the pitch count up, get him out early in games, or find a way to manufacture some runs and just take that series in sweeping fashion. And then also, we'll talk a little about the Jack Flaherty, Randy Arozarena thing. Arozarena, a little upset yesterday that with the leadoff hitter, you have 2 strikes on him, you hit him with the sinker. I think Randy Arozarena was just mad that he didn't get traded to the Dodgers, man.
Yeah. Then, I mean, Marcus, before we get going, of course, Marcus Grant here with us. Thank you, everyone, being in the chat. Like I said, Doug's with us. No, Greg, he is filling in for Slee today. So stick here on the ESPNLA YouTube. Travis and Slee. Greg will be here. They got a special draft that they do every Thursday. And today's theme, famous Gregs. So that's going to be fun. But like you said, Doug, we got a lot to get into. The sweep of the Mariners was huge. So we're going to react to a whole bunch in just a minute. But before we do, I just want to remind everyone that here at the Blue Review, we're presented by LAX and our friends at Los Angeles International Airport. Changes are arriving daily over there, just reducing traffic, saving guests time, and more. So if you want to learn it, you can check it out at flylex.com/transforminglax. So Marcus, sweep of the Mariners. You got the Flaherty, pretty good game. The Randy Arozarena incident, the bats are looking great. I just want to get your initial thoughts, and I mean, just whatever you got. Let's get right into this. Dodgers talk. I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Doug hit on a couple of big points, right? Nature is healing itself. Max Muncy is back and really hasn't missed a beat. I mean, homers in his first couple of games. You mentioned the big hit last night that really broke the game open. He has been a big part of this, and it's so nice because it was sort of like a deadline deal acquisition almost without having to give up any assets for anything. So, I mean, that's been a huge addition to this lineup. But Doug, I also look at some of the guys that they did bring in. Obviously, Flaherty was sort of the big one, and we can talk about him. But over the last few days, watching Kevin Kiermaier, watching Tommy Edman, and the things that they not only bring to the lineup, Kiermaier hitting the ball well recently, Edman getting involved in the offense, but Doug, what they bring to this team defensively, it's allowed Mookie Betts to move back to right field. Kiermaier has been just outstanding in center field. Tommy Edman, we've seen with a couple of highlight plays so far this since he's joined the team. This really is looking like a complete team. And you were saying last night, you were in the ballpark. It feels sort of like postseason vibes already because it feels like this team is starting to gel and come together right now at a critical time when they need everybody.
Absolutely, and you hit on it 100%. I think one of the more intriguing storylines for the last couple of months of the season after the trade deadline is the additions and guys that you bring in that were known as glove-first type of players, and certainly they've been able to provide that. You mentioned Tommy Edman, that diving stop and throw he made in the 5th inning. That was the best defensive play I've seen all season, outside of probably Kevin Kiermaier making that catch and throw in Milwaukee 99 miles per hour. So you've added 2 defensive wizards, and I'm not afraid to say it. Kevin Kiermaier is the best defensive player I've ever seen in a Dodgers uniform, and I've watched this team 25 plus years. I mean, for my whole life, right? So I think for me, the thing with Kevin Kiermaier, it's the speed, it's the arm, it's the instincts, it's how fluid he is, the way he can play caroms off the wall, and you just feel good when he's out there in center field. And I think that the Dodgers, I think the fans, they kind of have to be surprised with how productive he's been at the plate. I mean, as of right now, he's just 8% below league average offensively. With the Blue Jays, he was 46% below league average offensively. So the numbers with the stick are trending in the right direction, and he just has to be somewhere near league average with the bat to provide this team some value. So I did ask Dave Roberts after the game how big of an impression he's made on them so far. He said it's been a very big impression. And I also asked him how much of a push is he making to stick on this roster even when everyone gets healthy. And he said that he's making a very strong case. And he also mentioned that this roster could look very different on Friday with the return of Chris Taylor. So the point is, they're going to be making some very difficult decisions. We knew they were going to keep Tommy Edman because he's under another year team control. I think that the performance of Kevin Kiermaier, though, is complicating things a little bit for them.
Yeah, I think so too. And, Kiermaier is starting to hit, as you mentioned. They don't need him to be a superstar at the plate. They just need him, as you mentioned, to be good enough right now because he's going to give them a lot in the field defensively. I sort of laugh, though, because it feels like every time we talk about a guy who could potentially be on the chopping block, that guy turns into the greatest hitter ever, right? I mean, it was a couple days ago, everybody was wondering what happens to Jason Hayward when everybody comes back and he hits a big 3-run homer to break a tie and then eventually put the Dodgers, send them to a win. But as you sit there and look at it, right, Chris Taylor is expected back very, very soon. Right now, with this roster crunch, who looks like they may be the odd man out?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you hit that one on the nail. That has certainly been a theme this season. Then when the walls start closing in, your job's starting to be on the line, even dating back to Gavin Lux, who is a couple weeks away from being optioned. He gets it together. He's been one of the hottest hitters in baseball in the second half of the season. Jason Hayward, there was some talk that maybe by the end of this week with Chris Taylor coming back, they might IL him. They could DFA him. He hits a monster 3-run home run. He's one of the most respected guys in that clubhouse. He's not going anywhere. And then Kiermaier and the way he's performed, certainly these guys have gotten it together when maybe their job's on the line. So they don't want to update those LinkedIns, right? They want to stay on this team and they want to be able to perform. But as far as kind of the roster moves and what they're going to do, if it's my team, if I'm Andrew Friedman and these guys they know their team better than anyone, they make their moves and they're always playing 4D chess. But I think with the emergence of Kevin Kiermaier, I think you want to give him an extended run to see, like you said, he doesn't have to be a superstar at the plate, but can he at least be respectable? And then you combine the fact that he's as good as it gets defensively, give him an extended run to see if, okay, should he truly be on this postseason roster? A late game defensive substitution, someone that if you lose Miguel Rojas for any reason and you put Tommy Edman at shortstop, he can be your starting center fielder as well. So there's a lot of options for him there. But I personally think that with the September 1st expanded rosters, I would continue the rehab situation with Chris Taylor until then. And then you bring him up then, because then you could add Chris Taylor. You could add Andy Pages, who has options as well. So that's kind of where I'll go with this, because I think that it's going to be very difficult to keep Kiermaier off this roster. Jason Hayward, I mean, Marcus, can you imagine the team going up to Freddie Freeman telling them they just DFA'd his best friend? I mean, I just don't see it as likely.
I'm with you, right? Because of what he brings. And here's the thing. I know Dave Roberts, he gravitates to some guys and he gets partial to some guys. And at times he has been criticized, I think rightly sometimes, for it. But you mentioned Jason Hayward, obviously being friends with Freddie Freeman and sort of what he brings in the clubhouse, kind of a veteran presence and that sort of thing. I wonder, looking ahead to October, one of the criticisms of this team in the postseason the last few years has been they just seem to lack a little bit of fire. And how much does a guy like Hayward bring to that? Because, look, I go back to when the Cubs won the World Series, that rain-delayed Game 7. They talked about the fiery speech that Jason Hayward gave in the clubhouse that got everybody going. The Cubs go on to win. I would think that that's a thing that sort of does come into play. You like him, obviously, to produce, but I would think that they need a guy who can sort of light a fire under people in the postseason when they need that.
Absolutely. And I will tell you this. I mean, just being in that clubhouse, it is a Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts clubhouse at this point. We know King Kirsch, he's on another level. He's a legend, a Mount Rushmore player. But as far as kind of who runs that clubhouse, it's Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. But outside of that, Jason Hayward is as respected as anyone. I mean, as far as his veteran leadership, his ability to take some of the younger players under his wing. I know Dave Roberts has used Jason Hayward as a conduit to kind of get to certain players and send a message. And I think you're absolutely right that one thing that we've seen from this team a couple years in their losses in the NLDS last couple of seasons is you're just not seeing that fire in the dugout. I mean, this grit, that kind of mentality where, look, we refuse to lose and we're not going to go out sad like we've seen. And I think Hayward is a guy that brings that mindset. I think Teoscar Hernandez is a guy that brings that mindset. I think Shohei Ohtani, we'll see some WBC fiery Shohei Ohtani. So I definitely think that when you look at the cast of characters, and I mean, yesterday, Randy Arozarena, I mean, that whole incident, guys going over the dugout and going to the field. A couple nights ago after Hayward hit that home run, I think that really told you everything you need to know about how this team feels about Jason Hayward by the reaction. Yeah, Dave Roberts, who's jumping up and down, I think because he's feeling good that he pushed the right button, right? And Freddie Freeman, he's doing the superstar kind of smiling thing he's doing. They're just going crazy. And it's electric out there. And also, look, let's just be honest, too. Jason Hayward is someone that can run into a big spot and run into one and leave the yard with a big home run. I think the only kind of problematic thing is the fact that you have both those corner outfield spots locked. Teo's in left, Mookie's in right. And if you're going to use Jason Hayward as a pinch hitter, you might have to make some other moves as far as because he can only play those positions and you throw him in center field late when you have Kevin Kiermaier possibly. But I still think they like him as a bench bat. And that's what Dave has said. Likes him as a bench bat, wants to see him get some opportunities in center field, just to kind of keep him relevant there. But it's going to be a battle down the stretch. And I think that's what's exciting about this team is that they're continuing to hold on to the division lead. They have the best record in baseball, so you have those two, and then there's a lot of internal competitions, not just for the position players. It's who's going to be in the bullpen, who's going to be that number 4 starter between Kersh and Gavin Stone. So I think the internal competitions are as interesting as just trying to fight off the division rivals as well.
Yeah, and I see in the chat, Mr. Classic saying the Dodgers have a dilemma, but it feels like a good problem to have, right? Because as you mentioned, there's internal competition. There are guys battling for spots, and that is just making this team, I think, better. That competition, you know, the old phrase, iron sharpens iron. Everybody is really battling for opportunities here. And I was saying last week, we've been so busy looking over our shoulders at the Padres and Diamondbacks creeping up that I don't think we really paid attention to the fact that the Dodgers were also creeping up on the best record in baseball, that they were catching and passing the Phillies, that they were, you know, catching up on the Guardians in the American League. It's been sort of amazing because everybody is feeling that push, which is different than past years. Usually about this time, you know, the division was pretty much a lock. This team was sort of playing out the string through most of September. So it's really good to see this group having to battle and sort of be in a little bit of an early playoff mode at this point. But I wanted to ask you about Jack Flaherty because you were there last night, watched the start, gets through 5 2/3, had a little bit of traffic on the base paths. The first 2 starts, he got 6. He hasn't been through 6 innings yet. Any real concern with him because the pitch counts seem to be up. There's traffic on the base paths, but in the end, you know, he seems to kind of be working through it.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely has been his strong suit all season long. As you mentioned, going 6 innings. I mean, before he was traded to the Dodgers, had gone 6 innings in 13 of his 19 starts. And with the Dodgers, he is really hovering below that. Did make a 6-inning start against the Pirates where he had 10 strikeouts. But I said it yesterday. I want to see Detroit Tigers Jack Flaherty, right? The guy that was a top 5 pitcher in baseball when they made that trade. And I think that for him, he's certainly solidified himself as far as the top 3 between Glasnow and Yamamoto if he's healthy, and he'll be a game 3 starter. But I think that what he is providing is consistency as far as, look, Buehler goes 4 innings and you feel like that's length. You saw Bobby Miller was able to give them. I mean, 5 feels like the new 6 for the Dodgers based on how this season is going when it comes to innings. So I think the fact that when he's at his best, he's efficient. And I like the fact, too, he's not relying on velocity. And that's why I'm a believer in Jack Flaherty. He's not someone that has to pump 97, 98 to be effective. He can go out there and command that fastball on the edges, use that slider, use that curveball to go out there and be effective. And his delivery, as he told us after the game, is not as sharp and mechanically refined as it was a couple of weeks ago before the trade. So he knows that he's kind of working through just some minor things. But I think that's a positive sign, the fact that he's still been able to have success and provide a lot of value. But I think his best baseball with the Dodgers is still ahead of him.
We saw Blake Trinan come back last night. Gave him a couple of hits, a run in his inning of work. But the bullpen, have they figured out a kind of a lineup for this thing? I think the last time we talked about the fact that it just didn't seem like there was a consistent sort of path through that bullpen. Are they still kind of working through that for you?
I think for me, the big revelation is Michael Kopech. I mean, Michael Kopech certainly it has turned out to be one of the best pitchers traded at the deadline. He's also under another year team control. So this could be the start of a permanent type of closer for the Dodgers if he continues to trend in the right direction. He's pumping 102.6 miles per hour, and that's the kind of gas that plays up in the postseason. So I think just finding that rock to your bullpen is going to solidify a lot of things. They talked to Dave Roberts about it, and he told me that Kopech is as high on the trust tree as anyone right now. So that's including guys like Evan Phillips, who has really figured out of late. The fastball command's been better for Evan Phillips. He's quietly got his season back on track. And I think the big wild card for me is Ryan Brazier. Ryan Brazier, along with Brusdar Graterol and Evan Phillips, he was in the conversation for the best reliever for the Dodgers last season. And they brought him back. And to start the year, he really, really struggled, especially with inherited runners, dealing with that calf injury. And since he's been back, he's been great. So Brazier, you have Phillips right on track. Alex Vesia has been great all year, his best season as a Dodgers reliever. Blake Trinan did give up hits yesterday. It was first start back. I'm going to need some more time to truly assess him, but still, the stuff is still there, the spin, the velocity. He's going to be a high leverage weapon. And then Daniel Hudson, he's quietly stayed healthy all season. I thought that maybe when Trinan was activated yesterday, they would have Hudson maybe have a little mini IL stint just to recharge the batteries, kind of like Trinan did. Instead, they optioned Kasperius. So I do think that the bullpen where they're at, they're only going to get better because guys are like Brazier and Blake Trinan continue to get on track and get the experience and get the reps they need to kind of be the guys they were last season. And then also you got Brusdar Graterol. I mean, that was one of the big emotional plot twists. Also, I mean, this guy, he's fighting back tears. It looked like it was over for this guy. And then day later, Dave Roberts like, LOL, JK, it's a grade one strain, right? And Brusdar Graterol, he was one of their best relievers last year too. So I do like where this bullpen is. I truly do. And I think that the big question is, what do you do with Gavin Stone and Clayton Kershaw, right? I mean, they're your number 4 starters, but one of those guys is probably going to be in a short burst situation, maybe a piggyback situation. So I think they trust as far as value. They know that to get value out of Kersh, you almost have to have him as a starter, right? So Gavin Stone can pump 96, 97. Does he kind of go into that mix in some capacity?
Tyler Glass now, he goes on the IL. I know they were hoping it was going to be a short thing. It looks like it's turning into a thing, or am I overreacting here?
I mean, I was told it was extremely precautionary. They're protecting their investment. They know they traded and extended him, not for August, but for October. He's their clear-cut ace, the game 1 starter. And for me, I'm always concerned, man. I'm always, waking up at 3:30 in the morning in a cold sweat thinking of injuries because of what we've dealt with just covering this franchise. But look, I will say this. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, River Ryan said, "Oh, I begged Dave Roberts to stay out there. I wanted to finish that inning. What happened to River Ryan?" I'm not saying that's going to happen with Tyler Glass now, but definitely it just feels like an extended break to me. And they know that he's already blown past his career high in innings and he's game started, and they know they got to keep him fresh. But I mean, they're in a division race, and you got Bobby Miller and Walker Buehler making meaningful starts in a division race, and they're not as effective as they once were. So that tells me that, look, if they had the option of having Glasnow back, they would. But I also think that they're just slow playing it. They're being extra cautious because they know how valuable he is for this team in the postseason.
You mentioned Bobby Miller. He is scheduled to start tonight against the Rays. It goes without saying it has been a struggle. That first start of the year was lights out. Since then, it has sort of all been downhill. As you watch him, is this a physical thing? Is this a mental thing? I mean, I guess if they had an easy answer, they would have figured it out by now. But as you watch him, where do you see the problem lying?
The number one problem with Bobby Miller is finding a way to land that breaking ball for strikes. I mean, he is at 50% in his last start. The changeup, the curveball, the slider, he just hasn't been able to be consistent with his secondary stuff. Missing a little bit with fastball command as well, leaving stuff out over the plate. But the fastball velocity is at least back to where we saw from last season. I mean, that to me was the big concern this year because he got off to a great start. His first start of the season against the Cardinals, 11 strikeouts, 6 innings. It looked like he was going to be an all-star. That's where he was heading. And then the shoulder injury, The velocity went from averaging 98.9 down to 97. Well, the good news is the velocity is back to where it was. So that's definitely a positive sign, but really he has to be consistent with that secondary stuff. I mean, it's just not fooling hitters. And when he's not landing his curveball or his secondary pitches, they're sitting on the fastball. As you know, big league hitters can time a bullet, especially if it's not well executed. And that's kind of the issue with Bobby Miller. He has to find a way to get that feel back for his secondary stuff and land it for strikes.
Yeah, the 4 wild pitches in his last start.
Yeah.
Just it was rough. It was tough to watch at some point. Speaking of well, not tough to watch. Shohei Ohtani. We were talking before the show. 40-40 seems like it's the question isn't if, it's when for 40-40. You were asking, can he get to 50-50? Are you believing? Are you a believer in 50-50 this year?
I'm going to say it because it's Shohei Ohtani and he's a superhero and he's not from this planet. I mean, he's a little under that as far as the pace he's on, at around 48 stolen bases, 50 home runs. So he's close enough to, I think, where if you can kind of smell it at 45, right? I mean, you've seen Shohei get on base and steal second and third, and just like that, he swiped 2 bags. And I definitely think it's a possibility. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's going to happen because this is someone who is not a generational talent. He's a once in a sport, once in a planet type of talent. And he's not pitching this season too. And I think that there's been a bigger point of emphasis to run. And yesterday, Marcus, when I saw him scoring from first on that play, I said, you know what? They nailed it with him at leadoff. I mean, it's incredible to me. He's that big, but he's that fast, and he's got those instincts as a base runner. So it'd be special. I mean, we talk about records that won't get broken. If he does something like that, that could stand for a very, very long time. So if you get close enough, you absolutely have to go for it. I mean, look, hey, we're already on 45 watts. Like you said, we're getting the 40-40 very soon right here. But yeah, we're witnessing history with Shohei Ohtani. I do think, though, it does kind of mask the fact that since the All-Star break, the numbers haven't been MVP offensive numbers. But I mean, I always say, with Shohei, it's kind of like complaining about being the poorest billionaire, right? I mean, he's still big time money, but I think we're due for a big Shohei offensive explosion as well.
No, I'm with you because you're right. He's sort of become a 3 true outcome guy, it feels like, for the last few weeks, where it's strikeout, home run, or walk. But I think part of that MVP case, Doug, is the fact that when he is on, like, he just makes so many things happen, right? Like you know that there's a chance for a big home run to come, but you mentioned the stolen bases, just sort of putting pressure on the defense, on the opposing pitcher, I think goes a really, really long way. He's a unicorn, man. I mean, that's the only way to put it. He's just as good as we heard he was. Watching him now every day, he's even better than I thought he could be, which is wild.
Absolutely. And yesterday when Mookie was at the plate, I was just staring straight at Shohei, just kind of wanting to get the feel of the base running. And when he stole that base, man, he gets up, he claps. Like, it's like he hit a game-winning home run. And then when he hits a home run, he's just like, that's what I do. I mean, it's normal for me. It almost feels like he's getting more excitement through the stealing of bases. It's like this big rush for him. So look, I mean, it's fantastic to watch. And I think that the way that this thing has played out this season, I mean, look, Mookie Betts has been one of not my favorite players to watch all time as far as offensively, defensively, what he does. I mean, I said that this is Ohtani's franchise, but this is Mookie's team still. And he was going to win the MVP this season if the narrative was he was playing shortstop and doing what he did offensively at the plate. But the way that things have worked out for this team with the injury, one, you get Mookie Betts mid-season rest, so I think he's going to have a lot left in the tank to perform in October. And two, it led to the Dodgers getting to their best lineup, which I think this year, I'm not saying next year and the year after that, this is their best lineup, but this year, Shohei batting leadoff with the speed, with the dynamic base running, with the fact that Marcus, he gets on base with a walk. That walk is as good as a double, right? Yeah. I mean, with the way he's stealing bases, and he split those lefties. So the things that, I mean, the Dodgers have kind of caught some breaks this season as far as the way things have just kind of shaken out. And I think that's one of the big ones that we'll look back on and say, you know what, that was huge.
For sure. Doug, as always, man, it's good to talk to you. For the folks who are somehow uninitiated, I don't know how they would be, but let them know where they can find you.
You can find me on X, Instagram at DMAC_LA. You can find my show Dodgers Dugout live Monday through Friday on YouTube at youtube.com/Dodgers Nation TV. Yep, guys, definitely. I've been trying to trying to rack my brain for famous Greg's all show. So I mean, I got Gregory Hines. I don't know.
I got
Maddox.
Greg
How about
Brady.
Greg Maddox? I mean,
I got Greg Maddox. Does Greg Brady count? He was a fictional character, but he was famous.
One of my favorite busts of all time, Greg Oden. How about Greg
There
Oden?
it is.
There we
Shout
go.
out to Greg Oden, man. That first
Greg
game was
Oden
sad,
mentioned
man.
on
Shout out to
August
Buckeyes.
22nd, 2024.
But thanks again, guys. Always great to talk Dodger baseball with you guys, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Parker,
Yes, sir.
slide
We'll
us
have
on
you
out of
back.
here, please.
To Marcus, to Doug, thank you. And to the chat, thank you as always. And you know what we say here on the Blue View. Thank you to LAX. We'll be back tomorrow, 9:30, 9:55. We'll be back every weekday. So, of course, stay here on the Blue Review. And always, like I mentioned, stay here for Travis and Sliwa. Stay in the chat. We're going to get Greg up there on Travis Lee. Super exciting. So I bid you all a good farewell, and we'll chat tomorrow.
All right, take it easy, fellas.
All right, man. Appreciate it.